Today we are going to work with, I think, the most powerful of all the elements of art, the element of color. Color makes the world come alive. It makes it vivid. Can you imagine how boring it would be if everything was black and white and gray? You're going to learn today how to work with colors and how colors work with each other. So let's begin. This is a color wheel that I painted. As you can see, the colors run from red through the yellows and oranges to the greens and into the blues, the violets, and back to the reds. I'm going to show you how to set this up so that you can make one. Start with an 18 by 12 inch piece of paper. You will need a compass, a ruler, and a pencil. Let me show you how to start. I have my students open up the compass so that it's exactly 5 3/4 inches wide. We'll start by putting the pencil close to the edge like this so that I know it will fit. I'll put the point of the compass down and make my circle. It doesn't have to be really dark, like this. To divide it up into 12 parts, I have this small spoke sheet that I made for my students that I'm sure your teacher can make for you. You take a piece of paper, find the center, and make 2 perpendicular lines. Using a protractor at every 30 degrees, you'll make these lines that go off. And then you'll have the spoke. Using the very center of this spoke, you will slide it under your paper and line it up so that that spoke is the exact center on the dot that was made by your compass point. You may not see this on camera, but I can see the black lines shining through, and I am going to draw my spokes. Now you see we have our 12 areas. When I get to this point, I have my students put in a color code to match. So here I put a tiny R for red, RO for orange, O for orange, YO for yellow-orange, Y for yellow, then a yellow-green, green, blue-green, blue, blue-violet, which is a BV, V for violet, and red-violet. If you make them big and dark, they're going to show through the paint when you paint your paper. I've set up my paint palette like this, with red paint and yellow paint. And you'll notice that there's 3 wells or large indentations between the two as we paint. First, you're going to take your paintbrush and you're going to paint the red area. Make sure that you glide along with your paintbrush. Glide with your paintbrush so that you get a nice clean edge. Don't dab. When you do this, you get very rough edges. When you wash out your red brush, please make sure you get all the red out. You do not want to come in with this beautiful yellow color and then have all those ugly red streaks in it. And notice if I load the brush with paint and glide along, I get this lovely clean edge. We're going to take the yellow that we have and put it right into the center. Put a lot of yellow right here. We're going to go into the red and we're going to add some red to this. And we'll get this beautiful, beautiful orange. Stir it evenly, smoothly, sort of like homogenized milk. Make sure there's no red or yellow streaks. Once you get the beautiful orange, then we'll go to the orange area and paint. Right here. I'm showing you how to paint this way, doing all the oranges first, because I want you to understand the relationships of colors, how you can go and blend your oranges from your yellows and your reds. Now, we have our palette, and we're going to blend again. We're going to take the orange and put half the orange here and half of the orange over here. We're going to add a lot of yellow to it. So if you add yellow and orange together, what should you get? Right, yellow-orange, and isn't this beautiful? The red is the primary color, and so is the yellow. The orange is a secondary color, and this half step or intermediate step between yellow-orange is an intermediate color. Sometimes in an art book, this may be referred to as a tertiary color. It's quite a mouthful, but intermediate colors mean the same, and it's a lot easier to say. Now your oranges will be very similar in color, but you should notice a distinct difference between each of your oranges. We now have quite a bit of our color wheel done. I'm now finishing up the blue, and I'm going to blend the blue and the yellow to get green. And this gives us a beautiful, lovely green. We're going to start making the different greens. We'll take some of our green here, some of our green here. We'll add yellow, stir it, and if we mix yellow and green, we should get, yep, yellow-green. Sometimes it's referred to as lime. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite color. There's something very vibrant and lively about this color. And make sure that all those colors are blended. And then we're going to paint this between the yellow and the green. This is another one of the intermediate colors, sort of a half step between the secondary and a primary. Since this is a tiny area, I'm going for a tiny brush again. Let's fill in this last green area. We now have all the reds, oranges, yellow, all the greens up to the blue. Let's do the violets next. To do the violets, we'll need red and blue and probably some magenta paint up here to help dull down the brightness of this red dye. Let me show you how we do that now. We'll start right here in the middle, violet. We take red and blue and blend. Theoretically, we should get a beautiful purple, but sometimes a little bit of magenta really helps the violet to set and become beautiful. Notice how it's beginning to look a lot more like grape jelly. Ah, yes, a beautiful violet. So we'll take this violet and paint it right here. You'll notice as I'm painting this, there's a small little smear of yellow paint. You know that happens when you're painting sometimes. A dribble will happen. Let it dry, and when it dries, you can paint over it. We're going to split the violet now. I put red over here, add some violet to it, and you see how it looks almost like a rusty nail? That's because of the intensity of the red paint. But when I put a little magenta in it, ooh, it starts to look like cranberries. This beautiful cranberry color arrives. And that's just what we want. So we'll paint the red violet next. You can see it's like an intermediate step between the violet and the red. One last color. We're going to make blue violet. I'll take some violet here, put a little bit more blue in it. It should have a blue feel to it, but yet a little bit of the violet coloring. I tell my students that it should look like blueberries, fresh blueberries. Sometimes you have to play around a little bit to get it just right. Ooh, that helped. Blueberries. A half step or an intermediate step between blue and violet. We'll see all these beautiful colors come to life as they dry. Ta-da! Just finished cutting out my dried color wheel, and as you can see, when it dries, all the different colors show. We're going to take a ruler and a permanent marker, and very carefully we're going to draw a line to divide the colors. Be very careful that you stay on the line. If you have a wiggly line that's really out, you may want to do that individually. This is another type of color wheel that's lots of fun. You can put your name right inside the color wheel. Flores, my name. What you do is you write your name in, and we're going to color it according to the color wheel and complementary colors. You start with your color wheel, just like we did before, and you'll notice I have my color code in there. But I'm going to write my name inside this. You can write your name inside also. Let's say we're going to take, instead of using a name, let's use art, because we're doing art. And I will go A, R, T. Your letters can touch if you wish, or they can overlap. Let me show you how to do this. In the red area up here, I would paint all of the red here. I would paint inside the red here. Then I would go straight down into the green area, and I would paint red where the letters are. And this part, I would paint green, and I would paint this green. When I finish, it would look like this. Red with green lettering, green with red lettering. Red, orange, blue, green, red, orange. Orange with blue, blue with orange. If you paint all of the same color each time, you really do understand complements, and it finishes very quickly. If you want to really have a fun color wheel, look at these. They're made of shapes, and each shape is the color that you will see in the color wheel. Let me show you how to do this. We'll start with an 18 by 12 inch piece of paper and our design. We'll call this a template because we're going to trace around it. When you look at your paper, we want them to line up nicely. So I tell my students to think of this as the face of a watch. 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And we'll start at 12, right up here in the middle. To get the exact middle, you can measure or eyeball. And we're going to trace around it very carefully, like this. We're going to go straight down to the 6 o'clock and do the same thing. When you use the center points, the 9, the 3, the 6, and the 12, like the face of a watch, it really does help using those numbers as landmarks. And when you finish, you will have a completed color wheel. For those of you who think that a color wheel has to be boring, look at these two. I told my advanced students to have some fun with the color wheel, to show the complements inside, and give it some pizzazz. You'll notice that this one has the same grid that's very precise, whereas this one down here is a little more free form. It tends to curve more. Let me show you how to do this one. Put a tiny dot where you want the center to be, and then we are going to go up like this, and down like this, and then the middle down like this, and up like that. And then we need to break each of these into 3 areas so you can create some really terrific color wheels that are free form, that have lots of pizzazz. This is an assignment that I gave my advanced students. I told them to draw a still life. They had to break the still life up and use all 12 colors of the color wheel. The primary is red, yellow, and blue. The secondary of orange, violet, and green. And the intermediates of red-orange, yellow-green, blue-green, blue-violet, and red-violet. Aren't these spectacular? A color wheel is a wonderful point of reference when you go to paint. Any 5 colors in a row are called an analogous color scheme. You can start anywhere, go in any direction, as long as there's 5 that are adjacent to each other, you have an analogous color scheme. This painting here of the large walrus was done in an analogous color scheme. Notice the reds, violets, the blues, the blue violets. In this one, we've gone from yellow to yellow-green to blue. And notice this happy penguin that's been done in an analogous color scheme. In this one, two puppy dogs fighting over a slipper, we have two different color schemes going. Notice the difference between a warm color scheme and a cool color scheme. The vibrance and the warmth of this one and the cool subduedness of this one. These paintings show you the influence that color can have on your paintings and your drawings. They definitely can create a mood or a feeling. Houses make a wonderful subject matter for paintings. These two houses are the same design, but look how different they look because of the color choices. This one was done in complementary colors. This one was done all in cool blues and green colors. This house was done by one of my students, and they chose to do a secondary color pattern. So they have greens and oranges and violets. I'm just finishing up another really great colorful design. I took a white index card and made a bottle, just like we did in our shapes color wheel, and I overlapped the same object over and over again. And when I did this group of bottles, I used a cool color scheme: blues, blue violets, greens, blue greens. It looks really terrific. For my background, I used a contrast of a bright red orange, a really warm color. To give you another example are these great shoes. These were all done in a warmed color scheme of yellow, green, yellow, orange, and yellow, orange, and reds, red, oranges, all the bright warm colors. And I did a turquoise or a blue-green background. You'll notice that if I outline them in black, the shoes will really pop out and look great. If you want to do a different color scheme, of course you can. These shoes were all done in blues and greens with a yellow-orange background. And I put designs in the background, and each individual shoe has its own little design. Notice that the green has bubbles. The dark blue has these lovely little squiggles through them. The last thing we'll talk about is monochromatic. A monochromatic color scheme is when you use one color and you use it with gray, black, and white to change its value. This face is almost complete. I used violet, black, and white. I'm going to start with white, like this, and I'm going to put just a tiny drop in of violet. Whenever you make a tint, always start with white and add color to it until you get it the color that you want. Monochromatic color schemes are very soothing because the eye is not jumping from color to color. Remember, a monochromatic scheme is one in which there's one color with multiple values. Tints where there's lots of white, shades where there's lots of dark, and then we have in between tones where there's gray added. Well, after today, I hope you understand color a lot more and how colors work together, so that that question of what color should I use next is not such a daunting one. So, get out your paint, your crayons, and have some fun. Don't be afraid of color. Enjoy and make the world come alive in your art.
Thank you.